usually students from streams outside the mathematical stream are a little afraid of the science of statistics. They usually think that it is a very difficult branch, and very often there is a practice of skipping the topics on statistics, especially by the students of natural science and social sciences. But if you begin with very simple steps that will help you to understand this science, you can very well become very proficient in this branch. And studying the science of statistics altogether changes your outlook, your way of seeing things around you and analyzing things around you. You can usually approach the world around you in two ways, or you can see, measure and assess different objects and events around you, either with a subjective outlook or with an objective outlook. And subjective outlook varies from person to person, and the results obtained from such a subjective analysis of different phenomena around you will vary from person to person, because it is usually influenced by your personal affinities and interests. But in an objective study, if you are using standard tools of measurement and standard protocols of analysis, the results obtained by all of you will be the same, and moreover, the experiment becomes repeatable by anybody, and if the experiment is carried out systematically and scientifically, the outcome will be the same. So that is the importance of objective analysis, objective methodology, and this is otherwise known as quantitative methodology, and this approach is the basis of the science of statistics, which is used everywhere by everybody to study different situations related to organisms, objects, human beings, social situations, weather forecasts on agricultural production, industrial production, market movements, etc. So in this methodology, it can be called statistical methodology. Usually, you have to design an experiment, design your program of study and connect information systematically, arrange them systematically, and analyze them using scientific tools so that you can come to valid conclusions that are foolproof and scientific. So for this type of study, for a statistical analysis of a particular phenomenon, maybe a situation in front of you, a situation in which there is an epidemic like this COVID-19, and if you want to study the outcome of the influence of this disease in the society, what are the changes that are reflected in the society, in commercial production, in agricultural production, in other sectors of life, in the health scenario, in the health insurance scenario, like that. For any such purpose, you will have to design a scientific statistical experiment, and you will have to follow systematic methods of data collection and data analysis. So the first step in a statistical methodology is designing the experiment scientifically. So you should have very good knowledge on the objectives of your study, the requirements that should be available for making an analysis, and the tools of analysis that you will have to use. So the first step is defining the problem and designing the experiment. Defining the problem means you have to come to a hypothesis regarding the situation which you are going to analyze. Whether this particular condition, for example, the COVID-19, whether it has affected agricultural production in your country, whether it has affected commercial production of your country, whether it has affected the economy of your country, or coming to a micro level, whether it has affected the economy of a particular sector of people, the production of a particular crop, the education of a particular group of people, like that. So, first, once you define and come to an idea regarding the problem to be studied, then the next step is to have an idea on the process of data collection that you are going to adopt, and on the process of analysis which you are going to do. So the first step is, so there are different steps in a statistical methodology or in a quantitative methodology. The first step is this: defining the problem and collection of data. The second step is organization of the data, organizing the data. The third step is presenting the data in scientific and systematic forms. Then comes analysis of the data using appropriate statistical tools. And finally, the final process is the interpretation of the problem and your comments on the conclusions and your recommendations for the future. So when once you define the problem, you will be deciding which type of data are needed and what are your tools of data collection, and then you will have to collect the data. And for the purpose, either you will be collecting data directly from the units of your population. Your study population may include a group of farmers, for example, a group of fishermen, for example, a group of children, for example, a group of health workers, for example, like that. So once you decide the nature of your population about which you are going to study, you have to decide whether data are directly to be collected from the individuals of the population, or whether you are going to use data that are available from other sources. And if you collect data directly from the population, the data are called primary data, and if you are getting data from other sources, the data are called secondary data. And no doubt it is recommendable to use primary, it's recommended to use primary data because that are collected by you for the very purpose of your experiment based on scientific standards of measurement, and you know about each and every unit from which you have collected data, and so that your experiment will be more scientific and systematic. So for data collection, if it is primary data that you are going to use, depending upon the size of the population on which you are going to study, either you will be collecting data from all the individuals of the population, or you will be selecting a particular number of individuals from the population to form a sample that represents the population almost completely, and you will be collecting data from the sample only. So either you are conducting a complete enumeration or you are going for sampling. So either by a complete enumeration, which is also known as census method, or by sampling, you will be collecting the data. So once you collect the data, depending upon the nature of the population which you are going to study, you will have to use questionnaires, interview schedules, or certain tabular sheets in which you will have to write down the information if you are collecting data from a group of animals or from a group of plants, like that. So based on the nature of the population, either you will be conducting a direct interview, or you will be using a questionnaire. You will be handing over the questionnaire to the respondents and collecting the data, or you will be making data forms and using the data, you will be directly recording the data if you are dealing with if you are not dealing with human beings, and if your population is a plant population, an animal population, like that. So after collection of the data, the next step is organizing the data. Organization of the data. Organization of the data means the data collected preliminarily will be in a very you can say rather a Harzard form with different forms, data forms, some of them not filled in some cases completely, and you will have to get all the columns filled. You will have to systematically arrange the sheets, and you will have to go for further processes that may make you able to see and understand the things easily. So that is organization of the data, and organization of data has got 3 stages, 3 steps you can say. The first step is editing the data, the second step is classification of the data, and the third step is tabulation of the data. So editing, classification and tabulation. Editing is correcting any discrepancies if there are, filling all the incomplete columns in any form that is by visiting the individual of data collection for a second time, or collecting the information from reasonable sources like that. So when once editing is complete, your data sheets will be okay. So that is the first step of organization of data. So when once all the data sheets are ready, or data are available completely with you, the next step is classifying the data, classification of data. You have to classify the data based on certain standards that have been laid down by statisticians. Based on the scope of your experiment, based on the requirements of your experiment, you will be classifying the information that are available into different age groups, different income groups, different groups, socioeconomic groups, or different plant species. If it is a plant study, different animal species, if it is an animal study, like that. So, based on such criteria, like the social situation, economic situation, educational situation, or certain taxonomic situations, identities of the plant groups or animal groups, you will be classifying the data. So when once you classify the data, usually you get tables. So, and in another sense, tabulation is the third step of organizing the data. Tabulation is the preparation of data tables based on your classification. So you will be having different types of tables. Maybe generally there are 2 types of tables: tables of time series and tables of frequency distribution. And in tables of time series, you will be listing the things chronologically based on the time of occurrence of the events. If it is crop production for a number of years, you will be classifying it year-wise, starting from the first year of observation to the last year of observation, like that. If it is depending the data, if it is depending on the frequencies of occurrence of certain events, then the tables you are preparing are known as frequency tables, and there will be, usually there will be two columns. The first column will be the class of the variable. The variable will be classified into different classes, and so the first column of the frequency table denotes the class, and the second column of the frequency table denotes the frequency. So based on the class and frequency, you are classifying, and such tables are known as frequency tables. So as a result of classification and further tabulation, you will be getting either time series tables, or you will be getting tables of frequency distribution or frequency tables. So once you get the tables, organization of data is over. And there is one interesting thing, that people are not very much happy to study things from tables. Tables are very much reader unfriendly. Usually when you read a popular article, there is always a tendency to skip tables and start from the bottom of the table again. It shows that tables are not very much liked by ordinary people who are forced to deal with data, observations and data. So the next step or the next step in statistical methodology after collection of data and organization of data is the presentation of data. Presentation means presenting the data, the information available in the tables, in the form of diagrams and graphs that are very attractive. So there are two types of presentations. Presentation in the form of diagrams and presentation in the form of graphs. And among the two, as you know, as it is evident, diagrams are usually more welcomed by laymen because they are more attractive. So diagrams, there are different types of diagrams based on the size of the diagrams. The size means it may be the length, or it may be the length and breadth, or it may be the area, or it may be the volume, like that. So based on the size of the diagrams, you are representing data. For a smaller data, you are using a smaller diagram, and to compare with that with a larger data, you are placing a larger diagram. So diagrams are very attractive presentations, and the thing is that they are not very much technical. And if you want a more technical presentation of data, you should go for graphs. So diagrams or pictures, since they are not so much scientific, we go for graphs. And graphs are, as you know, graphs are drawn on graph paper. They are having very, very rigid values on their x-axis and y-axis, and the graphs are drawn adhering to the directions given in the scales used by you. So when compared to diagrams, graphs are more scientific and systematic. So diagrams and graphs are two ways of presentation of data. And when once data are presented, the next step is analysis. Analysis of data. And there are different ways of analyzing data based on your requirements. The first step in all types of analysis will be finding out the central tendencies of the population. The next step will be finding out the deviations, the variations shown by the population. And then carrying out certain tests to see that whether these variations are statistically significant or not. So based on your requirements, you will be invariably you will be going for the first two steps, the step of studying central tendencies and the step of studying variations. And often you will be moving to tests of significance also. And if the experiments are large with a number of variables to be analyzed simultaneously, you will usually go for a pattern of analysis which is known as ANOVA, which is otherwise known as analysis of variance. The importance of or the advantage of ANOVA over test is the usual simple test is that in ANOVA you can simultaneously consider several variables, and based on the results of your analysis you can see whether the data obtained from different sets of individuals, different sets of plants vary significantly or not. And based on this, you will be coming to your interpretations and conclusions. So the final step in a statistical program is interpretation. So you will be interpreting the data based on your analysis, the results of your analysis. So these are the basic steps involved in a statistical study. The first step is designing the problem and collecting the data. The next step is organizing the data. The third step is presentation of data. And the next step is analysis of data. And finally, the interpretation of data. Thank you.